Right, Year 1, it's now time for our English work. Let's start by reading our red words. Once, looked, then, today, that, man, white, what, have. Well done, Year 1. You're getting very good at reading yourself. Yesterday, Year 1, we received a letter. Can you remember who the letter was from? That's right, it was from Bob, and his job is the man on the moon. And we've got this very nice book delivered into our classroom. It's got shiny writing. Let's remind ourselves of the story. Is Man on the Moon, a day in the life of Bob. And this is a Blue Peter Book of the Year 2004. And this is written by Simon Bartram. Man on the Moon, a day in the life of Bob. Simon Bartram. This is Bob. Perhaps you've heard people talk of him. You may know him better as the man on the moon. This is where Bob lives. Every morning he rises at 6 o'clock. He has a cup of tea and 2 eggs for breakfast before leaving for the rocket launch pad. On the way, he stops to buy a newspaper and some chocolate toffees. He's on his way to work. On the moon. By 8 o'clock, Bob arrives at the launch pad, changes into his special man on the moon suit and boards his fantastic rocket ship. He must make sure he leaves by 9:15, otherwise he wouldn't make it to the moon by 9. On the way, he reads the newspaper and does the crossword. Bob starts work. His job as man on the moon is very important. He has to keep the moon clean and tidy. Quite often, astronauts drop sweet packets and cans. Some people say that aliens are responsible for much of the rubbish, but Bob knows that's not true. There's no such thing as aliens. By 12:30, it's time to eat. Bob goes to his rocket ship to fetch his lunch box. This usually contains 2 sandwiches, either cheese or peanut butter, an apple and some chocolate-covered nuts. Sometimes he meets his friends for a picnic. His 2 best friends are Billy, the man on Mars, and Sam, the man on Saturn. They talk about the stars and tell jokes. After lunch, tourist spaceships start arriving from Earth. It's part of Bob's job to entertain them and give them something to photograph. So he does somersaults, handstands and especially high moon jumps. Sometimes he performs for as long as 2 hours and is left quite out of puff. Occasionally, the tourist spaceships will land on the moon. When they do, Bob gives them a guided tour and a speech. He tells them lots of facts such as how many craters the moon has or how long it takes to walk around it on stilts. Sometimes people ask him about aliens and Bob explains patiently that there aren't any. Afterwards, Bob opens a small souvenir stand selling postcards, pencils, mugs and a small plastic moon models. By 4:30, all visitors must leave the moon. Bob looks around to see that everyone has left. He checks inside any big craters in case anyone has fallen in, but there's never anyone there. So he does somersaults, handstands and especially high moon jumps. Sometimes he performs for as long as 2 hours and is left quite out of puff. Occasionally, the tourist spaceships will land on the moon. When they do, Bob gives them a guided tour and a speech. He tells them lots of facts such as how many craters the moon has or how long it takes to walk around it on stilts. Sometimes people ask him about aliens and Bob explains patiently that there aren't any. Afterwards, Bob opens a small souvenir stand selling postcards, pencils, mugs and a small plastic moon models. By 4:30, all visitors must leave the moon. Bob looks around to see that everyone has left. He checks inside any big craters in case anyone has fallen in, but there's never anyone there. The working day is nearly over. It is time to check everything is in order before leaving for the night. Bob packs away his equipment and any unsold souvenirs into his rocket. He switches on the moon's nightlight before jetting off towards Earth. By this time he is very tired, but he still has to keep his wits about him while flying the rockets home. As he reaches Earth, it's about 5 o'clock. The rush hour is in full swing, with everyone leaving work and going home, just like Bob. At home, Bob is just like anyone else. First, he has a long bath. Moonwork can make you very grubby, as sometimes the dust can get inside your suit. Then he goes to bed with a mug of cocoa. He sleeps soundly, bathed in moonbeams, very happy to be the man on the moon. And aliens? Well, Bob would know if there were any. Wouldn't he? Right, you want to help us remember the story at home because you don't have the book. We're going to have a go at drawing a story map. Now, in order to do this, you need to have a piece of paper, or you can do it in your book, and you need to draw a squiggly line. I'm going to start here. I'm going to go all the way over here, all the way over here, and all the way over here. And this is going to act as a road, and we're going to tell our story as we walk along the road. So we're going to start up here. Now, can you remember the first thing that happened in our story? So we have Bob, and Bob is very happy because he is the man on the moon. So here's my picture of Bob. And every day, Bob wakes up at 6 a.m. So to remind myself that it's every day, I'm going to write the word every day. Every day, Bob wakes up at 6 a.m. He has 1 cup of tea. I'm going to draw myself a cup. And 2 eggs. So beside, I'm going to draw 2 fried eggs. Now, he needs to get ready to go to the launch pad, so I'm going to draw an arrow to the next part of our story. On the way to the launch pad, Bob stops off to buy a newspaper and some chocolate toffees. So I've drawn a newspaper and some chocolate toffees. And I'm just going to write the word then up here. Once buying his newspaper and his chocolate toffees, Bob is on his way to work on the moon. By 8 o'clock, Bob arrives at the launch pad. When he gets there, I'm going to write the word when. When Bob gets there, he puts on his Man on the Moon outfit. This is my spacesuit. And your drawings will probably be a lot better than mine. So I've drawn his spaceship. So when Bob arrives at the launch pad, he changes into his special Man on the Moon suit, boards his fantastic rocket. So I'm going to have a go at drawing a rocket. He must make sure he leaves by 9 o'clock to get to the moon on time. On the way, so I'm going to draw an arrow. On the way, he reads his newspaper and does the crossword. He reads his newspaper, I'm going to draw the newspaper again, and does the crossword. And up here I'm going to write on. So remember, it's on the way. Now we're going to go round this corner. Now, once Bob arrives at the moon, once Bob arrives at the moon, he must start work. His job as Man on the Moon is very important. He has to make sure he keeps it nice and clean. So I'm going to draw some cans and some crisp packets all over the moon. And I'm going to draw a hoover. And this is what Bob uses to hoover up the moon. So let's review our story so far. So this is Bob. He is the man on the moon. Every day he wakes up, has a cup of tea and 2 eggs. He then heads to work. On the way, he picks up a newspaper and some chocolate-covered toffees. When he arrives at the launch pad, he must change into his special Man on the Moon suit and head into his rocket. He must make sure he leaves by 9:15, otherwise he won't get there on time. On the way, he reads his newspaper and does the crossword. Once arriving at work, Bob has to tidy the moon up from all of the cans and crisp packets that have been left all over the place. Now, it is lunchtime. Bob goes to his rocket ship to fetch his lunchbox. It usually contains 2 sandwiches. So I'm going to draw 2 sandwiches. Either cheese or peanut butter. An apple. And some chocolate-covered nuts. Sometimes Bob has lunch with his 2 friends. One is Billy from Mars. I'm going to draw Billy here. And one is Sam, the man on Saturn. They talk about the stars and tell jokes. Great work. Now we're going on to our next part of the story. So another arrow. After lunch, After lunch, tourist spaceships start arriving on Earth. It's Bob's job to keep them entertained and give them something to photograph. So Bob starts telling facts about the moon. So I'm going to draw the moon and I'm going to write facts in the middle so that we remember that it's about facts. And he does somersaults, handstands, and especially high moon jumps. So here are my pictures of Bob doing a handstand and especially high moon jumps. And he can do these for up to 2 hours. So I'm going to write 2 hours. Poor Bob must get quite out of puff. Next we have occasionally. I'm going to write occasionally now, it's a very long word. Occasionally. Oh, it's gone over there. Occasionally the tourist spaceship will land on the moon. When they do, Bob then gives them a guided tour and a speech. A souvenir stand where they sell small souvenirs such as postcards. So I'm going to draw a postcard. It's going to have the moon on it and some other species. Pencils. Mugs. And small plastic moon models. Let's go on to our next part of the story. Now, before Bob can get ready to go home, he must check inside. So I've written the word before. Before Bob can go home, and draw a picture of Bob's house. He must look inside all of the craters. Here's my crater and some eyes to help me. Remind me to look inside all the craters to make sure that no one is left behind. But Bob never finds anyone, so I'm going to draw a cross. Lastly, Bob flies his rocket all the way home. Going to draw a picture of Bob's rocket. Now, moon work is very tiring, but Bob needs to make sure that he stays awake for the whole journey home. Now, our final bit is when Bob arrives home. So I'm going to write finally. Finally, at home, Bob, just like anyone else, likes a nice long bath, as moonwork can be very dusty. So I'm going to have a go at drawing a bath. He has a nice cup of cocoa. And then goes to bed. This is my picture of a bed. And Bob is happy because he enjoys being the man on the moon. The end. I'm going to do a full stop so I know it's the end. Okay, now we have our story map. Let's go along and read it together. This is Bob. He is the man on the moon. Every day, he wakes up at 6 a.m. and has a cup of tea and 2 fried eggs. Then, on his way to work, Bob stops off and buys a newspaper and some chocolate-covered toffees. When he arrives at his launch pad, he must change into his special man-on-the-moon suit and head into his rocket. He has to make sure he leaves by 8:45 to make sure he gets to the moon on time. On the way, he reads his newspaper and does the crossword. Once arriving at the moon, Bob's job is to make sure he tidies up all of the cans, the crisp packets that people have left behind. Now it is time for lunch, where Bob has 2 sandwiches, either cheese or peanut butter, an apple, and and some chocolate-covered nuts. Sometimes he has lunch with his friends Billy, the man on Mars, or Sam, the man from Saturn. They talk about the stars and tell jokes. After lunch, it is time for tourists to arrive. Bob tells them all the different facts about the moon. He does somersaults and especially high moon jumps for as long as 2 hours. Occasionally, tourists stop and Bob opens up a souvenir stand that sells postcards, pencils, mugs, and small moon statues. Before going home, Bob has to check on all of the craters to make sure that there is no one left behind, but there never is. Lastly, Bob needs to jump into his rocket and fly home, making sure he keeps his wits about him as the man on the moon. Finally, when arriving home, Bob, just like everybody else, has a nice bubble bath, a cup of cocoa, and he goes to bed, happy that he is the man on the moon. Full stop. Your challenge today, Year 1, is to draw your own story map. It does not need to be exactly the same as mine. Your drawings will probably be a lot better than mine. Now, when you come to reading your story map back, it does not need to be word for word of the book. We're going to have a go at writing our own version of the story next week. So your job today is just to remember all the individual parts. So when we come to writing the story, you will know which part goes into which. I am looking forward to seeing all of your story maps on our Zoom tomorrow. Have a nice day.